Start you talking about sex. All right. Later on, when we do our work on the fourth step, we'll really work on this. But there are those of us that think that Bill Wilson played a joke on us, and he wrote about sex on page 69. Now, I'm going to tell you that that's not true. That's not true, because when he moved the doctor's opinion forward, okay, he moved everything in the book forward. So it just happened that it fell on page 69. So you can check it out by writing in that book. But we'll tell you the story about this little girl who is always told by Charlie and Joe. So they tell it like down south. This little girl went to her sponsor and she said, I'm having problems with sex. She's in a program and she's doing what she's supposed to do, so she brought her problems to her sponsor. And the sponsor said to her, well, darling, when you go home tonight, Bill Wilson wrote about sex on page 69 in the big book. So when you go home tonight, you take out the big book and you read page 69. Well, this little girl was dyslexic. So when she got home tonight, she said, oh my, what was that page I was supposed to read? Page 96, wasn't it? Now let's go to page 96 and we'll read what it says. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept what you have to offer. Next paragraph. Suppose you're now making your second visit to a man. Third paragraph. He may be broke and homeless. Let's stop there and take a break. Let's go to work. Got enough sugar, caffeine, all those other stimulants, so we can tend to the big book. Let's go to the front of the book, Doctor's Opinion. Doctor's Opinion. It's Roman numeral 13. Any book you got, except the old original version. Doctor's Opinion. First word, we. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. We should have added that to the list last night when we were talking about what's in the book. All right, what's in the book is a plan of recovery. Okay? Convincing testimony is the first must in a book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Surely come from medical men who have had experience with the suffering of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at the nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcohol and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. That man, Dr. Silkworth, Silky was his nickname that Bill Wilson gave him. Small man, probably somewhere just barely over 5 feet, piercing blue-gray steel eyes. You can almost see it in the picture. All right, Silky. And Dr. Silkworth wrote this letter, which Bill had asked for. All right, and this is in a time before you had internet, fax machines, and those kind of things, and people wrote letters of introduction when they went from one place to another. Okay, so this is what it says: to whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. Where we read last night, seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. He's telling you, that kind of guy. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery as part of his rehabilitation. He commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise to still others. Well, that's what came out of the Oxford group. You got to pass it along. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. Now, the scientists never tell you that anything's, conclusively. They appear to have recovered. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. All right, now, you can imagine for a doctor to go on the line right here and say this, he's saying these men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. He's putting other doctors out of work, potentially. So he's not going to say, he's not going to sign this thing. All right, for the doctor, for Bill Wilson, to have this doctor saying, you may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves, that's a real credit to Bill Wilson. The physician who at our request gave us this letter, now this is Bill talking again, has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered the alcoholic torture must, there's another one, believe. That the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. But we know that the main problem with the alcoholic centers in his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking, just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic who leaves out his physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Well, what's the doctor's opinion? The doctor's opinion is that we have an obsession of the mind coupled with an allergy of the body, and once you give in to the obsession of the mind, you kick off the allergy of the body by taking a drink. The allergy manifests itself in a craving for more. Okay? That's the doctor's theory. Well, if you've ever done that, you can say, that's how it works. And that's what he's telling you. Okay? Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as an altruistic thing. Now, we're beyond human age, so only God can help us, so spiritual solution. Altruistic means in order to enlarge and perfect your spiritual life, you've got to work with others. That's altruistic. We favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is still very jittery or befogged. Mocus. Mocus is a word old-timers remember. Mocus. I remember asking my sponsor, what's Mocus? He said, you are. You're Mocus. All right? That's that state that newcomers are in, where they're like here, but they're not here. That's Mocus. Okay? It says, more often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached. Why? Main problem with the alcoholic centered is in the mind. Now, how long is that going to take? That depends. What have you been doing to your brain lately? As he has then better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. Back to the doctor. The subject presented in this book seems to me of paramount importance to those afflicted with an alcoholic addiction. I say this after years of experience as medical director at one of the most hospitals, blah, 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 and down through that page over to the next page. All nice stuff, but we don't have time to read it word for word. Let's go over to the next page, second paragraph. That's Roman numeral 26. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Now, the doctor is stating the obvious. Obviously, the average temperate drinker, if he experienced craving, would not be the average temperate drinker. All right? So if you can drink alcohol without experiencing the craving, you're not an alcoholic. All right? So you want a thumbnail diagnostic tool? Are you, aren't you? When you drink, do you want more? When you drug, do you want more? You got it. That's it. You're one. Okay? Now, he also says the phenomenon of craving. The phenomenon of craving means you can't explain it. We can't explain it. Just because you can't explain it, does that mean it doesn't occur? Not in my life. Not in my life. Not in my life. It occurs. Okay? Now, actually, if you watch Bill Moyers, if you watch that show that was on TV, they can show it to you. They can show it to you. If you watch a guy doing a brain scan on him, and you see the electrical activity going on in the brain. Because when they were putting him through this CAT scan, and they had his head in a CAT scan, they were showing him on a video. They were showing him people, cutting up the dope, and he was salivating. It was like mentally salivating, and they had all this red electric activity in his brain. So it's there. It's there. We call it urgent and craving. So it's there. We can see it, but why is it occurring? We don't know. We don't know. There's something going on here. Okay. So the phenomenon of craving. These allergic types can never, listen to me, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Okay? I'm going to suggest to you that safely using alcohol means without any risk. Safely means without any risk. Okay? So suppose you take a pill that is like alcohol, works on the same section of your brain, the central nervous system, but it's not liquid. Well, the book says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Can we ask questions about that? I mean, is that pretty clear? Okay? Down the bottom of the page. Down the bottom of the page. And I'm not telling you that what we're skipping isn't important. I'm telling you we only got so much time to do this. If you want to come to our remedial Big Book meeting, we have a remedial Big Book meeting, Pat and I, but we have it in our house. And it's remedial because we get a lot of people that have been around the program and didn't learn the Big Book, so we call it remedial Big Book. We'll take you through page by page, but we don't have time to do that right now. When you go down a page a little bit, next paragraph, it says, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. I love that. I love that. Frothy. I think of like whiskey sours and things like that. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. Now I know, even in the fog that I was living in, when people started telling me the truth, I knew there was truth. I knew that. I didn't quite understand it, but I knew there's something. This guy's got something. This guy's got something. And in my case, it was Pat, my wife, that was starting to give me these little messages, because she was already sober. And not my wife at the time, but she was giving me these messages, and they would come through. They would come through, like the strobe light, Now, the only one I know about is, and you probably got them around here, but I know about one on a radio tower on Route 1 when you're heading towards the airport. And it's a great big radio tower, and it's there so that it warns planes that the tower is there. And as you're driving down Route 1, it sends, bing, sends this thing of light, bing, And that's the way these messages used to come through to me, And immediately, all your defenses, all that insanity would kick in, and you start to try and cover it up, But every once in a while, somebody gets you, and you hear it, and it would come through. So that's why frothy emotional appeal doesn't. But people would say the reason you're in the trouble you're in is because you drink so much, and you cover it up. You cover up. Well, the only reason I drink so much is because you're married to this bitch, And you know what? The bitch threw me out, And then I'd say, the only reason you have these problems is because, I got this guy for a partner, and then my partner disowned me, and so, and then I had to end up realizing that what they were telling me to begin with was true. Down the bottom of the page. Men and women. How simple is this? But how profound is this? Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Right? I drink because my father's an alcoholic. I drink because the dog died. It's a holiday, holy day, any day, every day, all day. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Well, let me figure it out. I can wait about 10, 15 years till I grow up and mature and actually be a person of quality and substance, or I can drink a half bottle of Jack Daniels and feel like a person of quality and substance in about 6 minutes. And I asked the guy one time, he said, you love crack. That's what he told me. You love crack. I said, why would I love crack? He said, it's instantly orgasmic. I said, yeah, I probably would love crack. All right? So why we like the effect produced by the drug. Okay? Do I like the drug? No. Do I like what it cost me? No. But I like that effect. I want that feeling. Okay? The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate true from false. Is this true? Guys writing this, 1935. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. All right? Listen to me. Bill writes, he uses couplings of 3 words, and they're powerful. Powerful. They are restless, irritable, and discontented until they again experience the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Now I call it smooth. Smooth. You get a couple of drinks in me and I get smooth. You know that feeling? I'll handle this. You know? You're in a bar and people start arguing, you say, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it, honey. I got it. You know? Smooth. All right? That sense of ease and comfort, that's my term. Smooth. Which comes at... Now, think about it. Restless, irritable, discontented, ease and comfort. Your choice. You got about 3 minutes separating the effect. Which one do you want? Okay? Let me suggest you go back to page 130 in the back of the book. Back of the book. Oh, sorry, what is it, page 133? Yeah, 133. 133, the top of the page. It says, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We are sure. It does not say we think that maybe God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. You know, we read in National Enquirer, there's a rumor going around that God may just want us to be happy, joyous, and free. You know, it says we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Now, how are we sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free? Well, we say a prayer. Prayer says, Our Father. I'm a father. What do I want from my son? I want him to be happy, joyous, and free. Well, if I can want that as a mere mortal human being, what must God want from me? At least happy, joyous, and free. At least. Okay? So here I am in a doctor's opinion. It says I'm restless, irritable, discontented, but here I am on page 133, happy, joyous, and free. Now, my suggestion to you is what happens between those pages is the recovery program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You do those pages right there, and you can go from restless, irritable, discontented to happy, joyous, and free anytime you want. It's the program of recovery contained in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. But you see, there's a difficult thing for alcoholics and drug addicts. You have to follow the directions. That's the tough part. Let's read a little farther. After they succumb to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire, listen to me, how much? 100% psychic, 1-800-PSYCHIC, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? In your mind. All right? A psychic change, an entire psychic change. There is very little hope. There is very little hope as a recovery. Very little hope. Good alcoholic, drug addict says very little. That means there's some. I'll risk it. All right? What man's telling you, unless you got 100% change in the way you think, because the main problem in the alcoholic centers in his mind, there's very little chance you're going to make this recovery. It's not going to happen. If Bill tells you something he thinks is important, he tells you 3 times. On the other hand, strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change, number two, once a psychic change has occurred, how do you know if it's occurred? Here's how you know. The very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, who despaired, is despair another word for depression? You know people that get depressed. Right? The very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, who despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules, like are contained in this book. Second time, same page. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. It's another reason why Dr. Silkworth didn't sign the book. Doctors are never inadequate. They're godlike creatures that roam the world, saving people. Doctors never feel inadequate. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential, number 3, psychic change. So, what are we telling you in the beginning? That this book is going to bring you to a point where if you do what's in the book, then this power that you get in touch with via the book is going to solve your problem. That's what we told you last night. 3 times, same page. How important is this change? Pretty important. 3 times. That's 3. 3 times, same page. Through the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have little impression upon the problem as a whole. Another reason why you didn't sign it. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. All right, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. In other words, willpower's got nothing to do with it. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were drinking to escape. They were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. All right? You don't have to sell me. That's where my house, the car, the kid, the business, the 2 businesses, the 2 dogs went. Right there. You don't have to sell me. Okay? And it goes on this page to tell you 5 types of alcoholics, which I suggest you read some other time. Some other time. Down the bottom of the page, next to the last paragraph. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire, another word which means 100% abstinence. 100% abstinence. Okay? Next page. Top of the next page. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this question by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated from chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage. Gastric hemorrhage is a result of his alcoholism. Alcohol has properties. Alcohol, as a chemical, has properties. It irritates and inflames, and it dissolves. All right. About 1 year prior, this guy came in with gastric hemorrhage. Seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. Well, that about does it right there. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Hopeless state of mind and body. Following the elimination of alcohol, detox, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. Thank you, Jesus. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name, but partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. What happened? What happened to the man? Change. Okay? Bottom of the page. His alcoholic problem was so complex. Another case. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that he felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology. And we doubted if that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. Now, wait a minute. You tell me the stuff that's in this book can help you with your depression? Oh, I told you last night, depression occurs in the beginning of sobriety. You get depressed. You separate it from your friend. If you don't do the work in a book, you get more depressed. Okay? However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood, as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book, Doctor's Opinion. If you have to, and it tells you on our chart right now, okay, it tells you on the chart that we gave you, Doctor's Opinion, statement of the problem, all right? I'm powerless over alcohol. There it is, Doctor's Opinion. Why are you powerless over alcohol? Because you're an allergic type. You're an allergic type because you got this obsession of the mind that tells you can drink, this time will be different, it's subtle insanity, blah, blah, blah. As soon as you pick up the drink, you put it in your body, you set off the craving. The craving tells you got to have more and more and more. You can't satisfy it. That's why you're powerless. My life is unmanageable, not my wife. So you guys take it easy now. My life is unmanageable. Okay? That's Bill's story. We're coming up with that part right now. That's our problem. We got the first part of the problem down. Okay? We're coming up to Bill's story. Let's go to Bill's story. Bill's story, and then we'll read some of it. He's writing this in 1937 or so. So when he's talking about war fever, he's talking about First World War, okay, which Bill was in. He's a lieutenant in artillery in the First World War. So war fever ran high in a New England town to which we knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned. And we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and prejudice of my people concerning drink. In time we sailed for over there, and I was lonely and again turned to alcohol. All right, you can see it's starting to shape up in his life. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was drawn to a doggerel on an old tombstone, one of those brass plaques. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier. He caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is near forgot whether he die by musket or by pot. Now the guy's name on that was Thomas Thatcher. And several years later, a guy named Ebby Thatcher would come into Bill's life. Ebby Thatcher, I don't know where he got the name Ebby, but his name is Edwin Throckmorton Thatcher. But two guys named Thatcher played an important part in Bill's life. On this dead man's tomb. Bill says, an ominous warning which I failed to heed. Now he's 22 years old. He comes home from the war, and you go over to the top of page 21. He says, I took a night course in law. All right. Now, one might think he's a lawyer, therefore. Well, that's not true. He said he took a night course in law. In fact, there's evidence that Bill never went back to the school and took the final exam. In fact, he never picked up the certificate that he earned because he was drunk that night. The drive for success was on. I proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Selective perception. All right, you see, you only let in those things that already agree with what you believe. So many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. Now listen to this rationalization and justification. We had long talks when I would still her foreboding by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk. That the most majestic constructions of philosophical thought were so derived. Now, Bill was a fan of Henry Ford, and Henry Ford had an alcohol problem. And that's, I'm sure, who Bill was talking about. Okay? Let's go over to the next page. Top of the next page. Our friends thought a lunacy commission ought to be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had some success at speculation. So we told you last night. He's a speculator. So we had little money. But we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. Now, Bill was going to Wall Street, and at that time on Wall Street, you depended on the information that was sent to you by the company that you were invested in, if you got any information at all. At that time on Wall Street, there was a little ticker tape machine that was like a henpecker, and it would peck out in kind of a braille type abbreviation on a long strip of paper. It was called a ticker tape, and a ticker would tell you what your stock was worth at that moment in time. Now we see it on CNN. It's going across Bloomberg Network. Any place you look, you can see it up on Times Square. And you can see it. Merrill Lynch has it up. You can call in. You get an 800 number and find out what your mutual fund's doing. But at this point in time, Bill came up with a great idea. He said, if I can go out and visit all these companies, I'll be able to sell the information that I see from these companies to Wall Street investors, and they'll know firsthand what's going on in those companies. And Bill so conceived of a thing called the annual report that major corporations publish today. That tells you how well they're doing. But Bill set off on a motorcycle with his wife to go out and do this. And a motorcycle and a pup tent and Lois, and it was a Harley Davidson. That's for those people. That's why the Harley chapters call it, what do they call it, fifth chapter, Okay? So that was the last harness manual labor. So he's out running around the country doing this. For the next few years, Fortune, and he was right. He would feed back information, and people liked that, and they were starting to make money on it. So for the next few years, Fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seeding and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part of my life. There was loud talking at jazz places uptown. Everybody spent in thousands but chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair-weather friends. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. I don't know if you identify with that, but I certainly do. I got this Rambo mentality back in my head, and that's part of my subtle insanity that says, I'm all I got, but I'm all I need. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife helped at times by extreme drunkenness kept me out of these scrapes. In 1929, this is the only place in the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous that you find golf mentioned. All right, just a little side point. In 1929, I contracted golf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind old Walter Hagen. I began to be jittery in the morning and golf permitted drinking every day and every night. Next paragraph. Abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to the brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market had closed. Better late than never. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ down 32 points. It had been 52 in the morning. I was finished, and so were many of my friends. The papers reported that men were jumping to their death from the towers of high finance. This disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Alcoholic determination. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left, so I thought I'd better go to Canada. All right, alcoholic bailout. Next page. Liquor, next page, page 5, first full paragraph. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day and often 3 got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens, of course, right? Of course. What you're going to see in the next couple pages is you're going to see the progression of alcoholism. It's laid right out there for you. All right? We said that Bill's story is going to tell you about that second part of the step being your life is unmanageable, and here it is. What you're going to see in the next couple pages, I'm going to tell you how it goes, and you try to follow it. You're going to see, top of the page, progression. You're going to see renewed hope, followed by a want to control, followed by more progression, followed by more progression, followed by that renewed determination, followed by more progression. Top of the page, on the next page, you're going to see self-confidence starting to come back, more progression. You're going to see the hangover feelings. You're going to see despair and depression coming in, suicide thoughts. You're going to see determination come back. You're going to see suicide getting to the attempts. You're going to see geographical cures. And then you're going to talk at the end about Bill's renewed drinking and drugging. So let's start on page 5. It says, liquor ceased to be a luxury. This is progression. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day and often 3 got to be routine. All right, sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s. Renewed hope, mostly on Lois's part, certainly on Bill's. But, she would say, maybe it's going to happen. And I would pay some of the bills. Then he'd take whatever money he made and he'd go out and he'd pay the bills at the delicatessens and the liquor stores and the bars. This went on endlessly, and I began to wake very early in the morning, shaken violently. Tumbler full of gin, followed by a half dozen bottles of wine. A half dozen bottles of beer would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. All right, desire to control. Next paragraph. Gradually, things got worse. Progression. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising renewed hope. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point in 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and the chance vanished. Progression. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife had happily observed that this time, renewed hope, I meant business, and so I did. Determination. Shortly afterwards, I came home drunk. Progression. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone pushed a drink my way, and I took it. Next paragraph. Renewing my resolve. I tried again. Some time passed. Confidence began. Renewed hope. Confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills, Ha ha! You're not going in there tonight. Ha ha! Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone, and in no time I was beating on a bar asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk now. Remorse and horror and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. You know that thought. You don't know what it is, but when it happens, it's going to be bad. All right? Down the bottom of that paragraph. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. Determination returns. The mind and the body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony for 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when a morning terror and madness were on me. Again I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself as a weakling. All right, and then over to the next page. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my insanity, so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, as I was 40 pounds underweight. All right, and it goes on to tell you what happened to him in the next couple of paragraphs. But let's go down to the second full paragraph. It says, it relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely, this was the answer, self-knowledge. All right, like we said before, this is the man, the woman that tells you, I understand. I know what my problem is. All right? But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. Let's go to the next page. Next page, first full paragraph, page 8. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Bill just took the first step. Right? Alcohol was my master. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital, a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity, that subtle insanity, of that first drink. And on Armistice Day of 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is just before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. And it's right about now, November 7th, 1934. Okay? now known as Veterans Day. All right, I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of my existence. I was to know a happiness, a peace, and a usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. If you don't feel that way about Alcoholics Anonymous, you're probably not doing the work that's in the book. I certainly feel that way. I know a happiness, a peace, and a usefulness that I never thought I would know. And as longer I stay in the program, the better it gets. And I suggest to you, if you want what I got, do the work that's in the book. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected that there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. My wife was at work. Listen to me. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of the bed. All right? Because I would need it before daylight. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. Ebby Thatcher's calling. Okay, Ebby Thatcher. Ebby Thatcher is the guy who was saved by Roland Hazard and Ebby Thatcher. Right there. Bill Wilson, Ebby Thatcher. Ebby Thatcher is the guy that was saved by Roland Hazard, that I told you about last night. And Ebby was now in the Oxford group, so in the Oxford group he had to go recruit somebody, evangelize, and get somebody in. So when he thought, who do I know that's worse than me, he thought of Bill Wilson, so he called him up. Okay? My musing was interrupted by the telephone. And what does it say? It says, the cheery voice of my old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. It was years since I can remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he had escaped. Now, it never crossed Bill's mind that he might have gotten better, you know. Okay? I wondered how he escaped. Okay? Next paragraph. The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table and he refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come on, what's this all about? I queried. He looked straight at me, simply but smilingly. He said, "I've got religion." I was, yes, so that's it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspected a little cracked about religion. He had starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire all right, but bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told how two men had appeared in court persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. This is the hand of God we're talking about. Of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. All right, the 6 steps of the Oxford group. There were 6 steps. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. Next page. All right, he came to pass it along to me if I cared to have it. Top of the next page. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. He talked for hours, childhood memories, danced before me. Let's go down to the same page, to the 3rd paragraph. I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist, for few people really are. For that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes and the chemists and the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. I simply had to believe in the spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation. Let's go to the next page. Next page, page 11. 3rd paragraph. But my friend sat before me, and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Complete, 100%. No reservations, no holding back. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to the level of life better than the best he had ever known. Next page. Page 12, paragraph 1. But we got this problem in our mind. It tells you on page 29, main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. So we resist the input, even in the information that's sitting in front of us. So Bill says here at the top of the page, despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of old prejudices. I had still aroused a certain antipathy. Now, Bill's grandfather instilled this in him because he distrusted those itinerant speakers that would travel up through Vermont, kind of like the medicine man type of thing that they used to do. So Bill had a distrust for organized religion. Okay, and I looked up the word prejudice just to find out how Bill's using it, because he uses it a lot in the book. And it says here that a prejudice is a judgment or opinion formed before the facts are known. That sounds like alcoholic, doesn't it? You know, you start talking about something, what do they say? I know. No, I know. No, I know. Yeah, no, I know. Okay? That's what Bill said. All right, you got this prejudice. Same page 12, second paragraph. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? This statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered for many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required to make my beginning. How easy can this get? All you got to do is become willing. You know, you don't have to actually do it. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Complete, 100%, right? Upon a foundation of complete willingness. That's without reservation. Well, I'll do those things, but I ain't taking that step. Not with her. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus, I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want Him enough. At long last, I saw and I felt and I believed. Scales of prejudice and pride fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have Him with me, and He came. Next page. Next page. Now, you go to those meetings. You go to those meetings. I know you go to those meetings. I know you go to those meetings, and they tell you at those meetings, they tell you, you don't have to work the steps right away. Take your time. You'll know when it's time. This kills more people than anything, any other piece of advice given to Alcoholics Anonymous. You'll know when it's time to do the 4-step. You'll know when it's time. Of course, you might die in between, but you'll know when it's time. Okay? We're going to show you a number of places in the book where it tells you you don't know when it's time. First of all, it tells you on page 29, main problem with the alcoholic centers in his mind. You're trusting a sick mind to tell you when it's time to do the next thing you got to do to get better while you're still sick. Think about it. Here's Bill. He's going to be lying in a hospital bed. He takes about 9, 10 of the steps, lying in a hospital bed in detox. All right, here we go. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. There, I humbly offered myself to God as I understood Him. What step? Step 3. All right, to do with me as He would. I placed myself unreservedly, 100%, under His care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without Him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend, capital F, God, take them away root and branch. Step 4, step 7. My schoolmate visited me and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. Step 5. We made a list of the people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to right all such matters to the utmost of my ability. Steps 8 and 9. Lying in a bed in a hospital. I was to test my thinking by my new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Step 10. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as He would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore upon my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. Step 11. So what do we got? About 9 steps. Guys lying in detox. Detox. And we got people telling you, you'll know when it's time. Don't worry about it. We got people killing people with advice where they tell them you take a step a year. A step a year. Whoa, come on, man. I got 12 cuts on me. I'm bleeding to death from all 12 cuts. Well, we'll bandage one every couple of months. Don't worry about it. All right? We got people killing people in this program. All right? Down the bottom of the page. My friend, small f, friend, Ebby. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all. See it? Small word, big message. All my problems. All my problems. Some? Say some? Let's say. How you spell some? A-L-L. Said all. I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. We got people going to so many damn meetings. I said to Pat, we know this lady's going to about 8 different self-help groups. I said, what happens when she gets your problems? Call a board meeting, get all her sponsors together. How do you, what do you do? How do you have more than one sponsor? How do you have more than one sponsor? How do you do that? Why do we do that? I know why we do it. I know why I would do it. I never did it, but I know why I would do it. See, if I got more than one sponsor, I can call up all my sponsors until I find one that agrees with what I already think. And then I can say, when people say, did you talk to your sponsor about it? I did. What did he tell you? He told you what I already thought. Now, what we don't tell people is I called the other 7. They told me exactly the opposite. But we don't have to tell them that. So it's good to have 8 sponsors, This book says this program will work on all my problems. If I've got the original problem to begin with. The original problem is the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. That's what it said. You remember where it said that? Beginning of the book, page 13. Roman numeral 13. All right, Roman numeral 13. Some of you folks weren't here last night, so let's do it again. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So are we recovering or are we recovered? Doesn't matter. You're recovering from your addiction. You're recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body if you're doing the work contained in the book. Okay? So Bill says, if I've got that problem, this program should work on all my problems. And I got to tell you, there hasn't been a thing that I brought to Alcoholics Anonymous and the people that sponsored me, the people I trust in this program, that I haven't got help with. You can do that. Okay? Let's go to the next page. Next page, page 14, second paragraph. Here's what happened to Bill in the hospital. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I have never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but His impact on me was sudden and profound. Down to the 5th paragraph. When I lay in the hospital and the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. My friend, Evie, had emphasized the absolute necessity, essential to recovery, the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs, and particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Alcoholics Anonymous going from a we program to an I program. If we don't turn it around, we're going to lose our program. It's imperative to work with others as he'd worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to enlarge and perfect his spiritual life, how do you do that, Fred? Through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Next paragraph. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate for old business associates to remain skeptical for a year and a half, during which time I found little work. I was not too well off at the time and plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment and depression. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day, as it did in Akron, the fruit of which was we created this whole damn problem, the whole damn process, not program. Next page. Page 16. Page 16, first full paragraph. An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there is a deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day, in and through us, or we perish. Most of us feel we need to look no further for utopia. We have found it with us right here and now. Each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Next paragraph, or next chapter. Next chapter is we're starting to get into the solution. All right, we're starting to get into the solution. Now, Bill Wilson, knowing that he's talking to alcoholics and drug addicts, and figuring that maybe those alcoholics and drug addicts wouldn't know that they're starting to get into the solution in this part of the book. So what Bill does is he titled the chapter, "There is a Solution." All right, got to make it easy for you. And it says, top of the page on page 17, we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans, all sections of this country, many of its occupations. Now, you know, when this book is being written, Bill Wilson's trying to write this book so that any place it goes, people can pick it up without the help of the program, without a meeting on every corner, without 90 meetings in 90 days, because there weren't 90 meetings in the whole world. People are going to be able to pick it up and start to recover and start to spread the word. So that's why he's talking about it. This program fits everybody. It goes on to say, we are people who would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is incredibly wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Down the bottom of the page, 17, the third paragraph. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. Next page, top of page 18. An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all the things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. And if you haven't experienced those things, then probably you're in the wrong place. If you want a way to diagnose whether or not you got this problem, have you experienced those things? This is a diagnostic tool. All right, we've read most of what's on that page, so we're going to jump to another page. Next page, 19. Now you know those people. You've heard them speak at meetings. You hear them. I know you hear them. But you know what we got here? My friend Milton Lewis from Cleveland talks about the big book. He said the big book is a bullshit sifter. All right, and I'm going to ask you as you go around to your meetings to just envision what old Milty's talking about. He said what you do is you take the local bullshit that you hear in meetings and you run it through the big book and see if it holds water. Because I'm going to tell you, what you're hearing at meetings doesn't come from the big book. All right? So you heard people at meetings say, well, just stop drinking. Just stop drinking. At least I didn't drink today. We have a friend named Cody who talks about this axe murderer. Axe murderer. He chopped up his whole family and mailed their body parts all over the country to the rest of the family. And he went to a meeting that night and he told the sponsor, because that's what you're supposed to do. You got to tell your sponsor when you do things. And the sponsor said to him, but did you drink? And he said, well, no, at least I didn't drink today. He said, well, now we got something to work with. Okay? So, page 19, it says, none of us makes a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. Okay? If you go to page 122, Bill tells you something that's important. He tells you at least twice, at least 3 times. Go to page 122. Page 122 in the third paragraph. Third paragraph. He tells you, cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained, abnormal condition. Cessation of drinking. All right, second time. Just the beginning. just the beginning. Okay? We got more. We'll tell you later on. But there's twice, so you know it's starting to be good. Page 19, go to the third paragraph. It tells you what Bill's starting to get into now, why they published this book. We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to the task our combined experience, knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Let's go to the next page. Top of the page, on page 20, our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may be of help. You may have already asked yourself, why is it that all of us have become so very ill from drinking? Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking yourself, what do I have to do? Well, here it is, the purpose of the book. It is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. We shall tell you what we've done before going into a detailed discussion of maybe something that goes on, blah, blah, blah. Okay, down the bottom of the page, moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely, but if they have a good reason for it, they can take it or leave it. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker who may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, such as ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. Next paragraph. But what about a real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. There's the phenomenon of craving kicks in. All right, and Bill goes on to tell you for about a page and a half what that is like. In essence, what he's telling you is if you start to drink and you cannot guarantee your behavior once you start to drink, you're probably an alcoholic. That's it. All right? I'll save you that whole page. If you can't guarantee your behavior once you drink, you're probably an alcoholic. Let's jump to page 23. Page 23. Page 23, it says, therefore, the main problem with the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. If you ask him why he started on the last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes those excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of a man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Once in a while, they tell the truth. And the truth, stands to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took this first drink than you have. That's because that a subtle insanity creeps in. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. All right? Now, we were down in Atlantic City last week, and I suffered from that obsession. It concerned Donald Trump. And it occurred to me that the reason they build those big buildings is that there are a lot of people down here suffering from that same obsession. So, I made a contribution to old Donald. But they often suspect they are not down for the count. Next page. Next page, page 24. Italics. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness the sufficient force, the memory of suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the drink. So the solution does not lie in your mind. Bill's telling you this over and over again. It does not lie in your mind. That's what he's setting you up for. All right, down the bottom of the page. When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has hopelessly placed himself beyond human aid. Now, don't exist in your mind, doesn't exist in anybody else's mind. All right? Any other humans. Now, if you're out there cavorting around with other than human types, you've got some real problems. All right? Where is the solution? It's a spiritual solution. That's why he's telling us beyond human aid. And unless locked up, they may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot. All right, here it is. All right, here it is. This is the solution. There is a solution. Article connoting one. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for a successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we have been living it. All right? It tells us in a book that, we hear this, you got to surrender. So that's what he's saying. Have you surrendered yet? Have you come to the point where you feel hopelessness and you see the futility of life as you were living it? If you have, you might be ready. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, more promises. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. All right? Spiritual experiences. All right? So, spiritual experience revolutionized the whole attitude toward life and fellows in the world. So, you've had it. Something's starting to go on. Great fact is just this, nothing less. We have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our attitude, our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Next paragraph. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, or, what's the other one? To accept spiritual help. Well, let me see. You want to weigh this up? Being a good alcoholic, can I think about this? Can I call you back? Can I think about it? Let me see. Here it is. I can go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best I can, or I can accept spiritual help. Well, can I think about it? Can I call you back? Can I get back to you next week? Okay. This we did because we honestly wanted to, and we're willing to make a certain effort. All right. Let's go to we want to talk about this. This is Roland Hazard. We can do this. Roland Hazard. This is a story about Roland Hazard. All right. I'm talking about this, and I'll tell you the story rather than read it. That's the story about Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard's family had a lot of money, so they sent him over to Austria, wherever that was, Switzerland, wherever Dr. Carl Jung was. And they sent him over there, and they said, solve the problem. Just keep him, And Dr. Jung had him come, and he lived in the castle with him, and he would treat him, and he'd take care of him. And as soon as he turned him loose to go back to America, old Roland would get drunk. And then they'd call him up, and he'd go down in the village, and he'd pick him up, and he'd bring him back to the castle, and he'd treat him, and he'd get ready. Another year would go by, and the checks kept coming in from America, and Dr. Jung would treat him, and he'd get him back to that point, and he'd say, okay, Roland, you're ready to go, and he'd let him go, and he'd go to the train station, he'd get drunk, and Dr. Jung would go down to the train station, pick him up, bring him back to the castle, treat him, and all the checks would come in from America, and year after year it would go on and on and on. And finally, at one point, Dr. Jung said, and there it is in page 26 in the third paragraph. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. Roland, this is, all right? Okay? He begged the doctor. He said, Doctor. All right? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society. And he would have to place himself under lock and key and hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on earth where other free men may go, without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation with our friend had with the doctor. The doctor said, this is Dr. Jung now, he's telling Roland, the doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed in the extent that it does in you. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed with a clang behind him. That's a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Okay? You got a premier psychiatrist in the world telling you, you ain't got it. You ain't never going to get it. It ain't happening. All right? And what does a good alcoholic say? What does a good alcoholic say? He said to the doctor, is there no exception? You know? And the doctor said, yes, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early time. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begins to dominate them. In fact, I've been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. I remember last night we were playing with those dots, and I told you that you state the problem, you should be able to solve the problem, and you couldn't solve the problem when I told you the problem. When I told you what the answer was to the problem, when I told you the solution, you couldn't solve the problem. What was missing was the program of action needed to take the solution and apply it to the problem. So what Dr. Silkworth had, what old Silky had, was he had the problem. He knew the problem. Dr. Young knew the problem. Dr. Silkworth didn't know the solution, but Ebby Thatcher brought the solution to Bill. But Dr. Young knew the solution. He knew the solution. He just told you in a paragraph, this is the solution. But he couldn't bring it about because he didn't know the program of action necessary to bring it about. Okay, when Bill and Bob, I tell you last night, I told you, and I'll tell you all the time, the hand of God's in here saying, no. Ain't no doctor getting his hands on it. I'm giving this to two drunks. Because I want those two drunks to keep helping other drunks. So I ain't letting the doctor get this. The doctor got close. He got close. He figured it out. He got real close. And he told him exactly what he had to have happen. But he couldn't quite get it to happen. Okay? I want to talk about this little paragraph here on page 27 in paragraph 4. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about it. All right? Here's what has to happen. This is Dr. Young describing the change. Now, we talked about change. Change is necessary. It's essential to recovery. So what is this change? Here's one of the best, most scientific explanations from a highly regarded psychiatrist telling you exactly what has to happen. He tells you that they're phenomenal. You can't really explain it. Why? Because it's beyond human comprehension. Okay? It's the power of God. It's the grace of God. He tells you in that paragraph there, they appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Okay? Now, if my change that's going on inside me is in the nature of a huge emotional displacement and rearrangement, how am I going to be? How am I going to be acting? What's my personality going to be like? Am I going to be up one minute, down another? Am I going to be terminally depressed? Am I going to be going off the deep end? Am I going to be running, trying to fix everything, getting 800 jobs, working 4,000 hours a week? How am I going to be? The next day I'll be sitting in my room crying. It's huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. You're going to be able to depend on your emotions. You're going to be able to depend on your mind to give you good impact, to give you good input. You're going to be able to figure out solutions. You're going to know exactly what to do. Think about it. Could you, when you're in a process of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements? No. You need a sponsor that's been through it. You need somebody to tell you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I went through this too. It'll end. It'll end. I just can't tell you when. It'll end. Okay? If you do the work necessary that you find in this book, it'll pass. It'll pass. If you got the problem I got, this solution will work for you. All right? Just keep doing what you're doing. I'll help you. Okay? He also tells you ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces in the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. I had a sponsor, and my sponsor Jack told me, I was talking about this old lady one night in a meeting. And I don't remember her name. You remember her name? What is it? I don't remember her name, but I was talking about her one night in a meeting. She was a pain in the ass. You get these. She had like 3 glasses of sherry, and then she went to AA. And I'm like, what? So I was talking about her one night in a meeting. Well, she wasn't there. So next Monday night, my sponsor Jack says, you got to go apologize to so-and-so. For what? She said, what were you talking about all last week? I said, well, she wasn't here. He said, it doesn't matter. What do you mean it doesn't matter? She didn't hear me. He said, you talked about it. You got to go apologize. All right, I go, excuse me. I had to apologize to you because Jack told me I was talking about you last week. So I'm here to apologize. And I got to walk away, and she says, well, what did you say? Oh, shit, what did I say? Jesus Christ. I said, well, if what happened to you would happen to me, I'd still be drinking. That's what you think of me? That's not what you think. That's what I said last week. You asked me what I said last week. All right? Well, I want to tell you that I'm sober 22 years, and I don't do those things anymore, and I can't tell you that. I do some of those things anymore, but I don't do them as much as I used to. But I will tell you that the main reason I don't do it as much as I used to is I don't like to apologize. I don't like to apologize. I don't like to go up to somebody and say I was really wrong when I did that. And somewhere or another, the electrolytes, whatever that is, the electrolux in my head, it hooked up. And the thought came to me that if I have to apologize for everything I've done wrong, if I have to make amends for everything I've done wrong, that maybe if I don't do anything like that anymore, I don't have to apologize. And that's what he's talking about here. This is how simple it is. See, my value system said that she wasn't there. It didn't count. My sponsor says it counts because it affects you. That's why it counts. So if you take the actions I tell you, then you'll stop doing the things you do that affect you. So that's what they're talking about. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. And a completely new set of conceptions and motives begins to dominate them. Things that come out of my head today, and I said, I don't believe I just said that. I don't believe that. I don't believe I just did that. That's because a change has been made. Okay? So, Roland Hazard. And if we're going to stop in a couple of minutes, but there's only a couple of pages left of the chapter, so let's do that. And then we'll be on the third chapter when we get back from lunch. You got a decision yet? Do you have a decision yet? Okay. We'll tell you Pat's decision in a minute. After this short message from our sponsor. Okay. Next page, top of the page, page 28, second paragraph. We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be a loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book, Varieties of Religious Experiences, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen, believed, means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of the living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. All right? Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. Last paragraph. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it, then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, chapter 5, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 43 personal experiences. Now, this is the first edition, so that changed. Each individual, and this tells you what those stories are supposed to be about in the back. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. Now, why is that necessary? Because it's a spiritual solution to the problem. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in our lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that is only by fully disclosing ourselves when we believe That is only by disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. All right, let's go. Let's go to work. Let's go to work. Enough fellowship. Let's go to work. We're going to start off with a special announcement. If you have that red book, or if you have an original manuscript and you turn to the first page, you will see on the first page of that manuscript that this first edition of the Big Book, the first draft, was typed at 17 William Street in Newark, New Jersey. All right, and if you look over to our right, there's a display over there that is about the effort to save 17 William Street. So I'm going to let Pat, my wife, second wife named Pat, talk about her special project. That this was an inspiration that she got, and she's working on it. And here's an advertisement.
Hi, my name is Pat, and I'm an alcoholic. I guess about 2 years ago, I found a auction notice in the Star Ledger, and listed on the properties was 17 William Street, and it caught my eye because we were reading Language of the Heart and AA Comes of Age at our group meeting, and I realized that probably might be the building where the Big Book was written, and I researched it and found out that it was, and kind of discarded the thing because I didn't have time at the time to get involved in the project. And then a few months later, I saw it again, and I once more ignored it. And the third time that it was brought to my attention was by a fellow that was actually in a program out of Freedom House, and he handed me the Star Ledger and circled 17 William Street. And I thought, well, I don't think that I can ignore that this time. I had called and I'd spoken to somebody at City Hall previously just to see, and the guy told me this building's worth $8 million, and, I got a little turned off by that figure. So when I got the third little nudge, I said, okay, I can't ignore this. So I started a group, and I got a group of people together, and we meet. Sometimes we meet twice a month, and down in Roseland in Blessed Sacrament Church. And we're putting together a formula to take to the mayor, development plan, and we've just gotten incorporated. And rather than calling it the 17 William Street Project, which is what we started to talk about doing, we thought that would not be significant to many people in recovery, maybe. So we called it the Works Project, which was after the Works Publishing Company, which was the publishing company that originally published the Big Book. So we meet, and we're going to formulate a development plan. And as of yesterday, I think we got an in with Sharp James, the mayor of Newark, and we've been before the Historical Society, and we're getting the site set aside as a historical site. If we do that, then they landmark the building or the corner, and they will freeze demolition or auction of the building. So that's where we are. Right now we want to know if Sharp James is willing to give us the building, and if we have to go for the nonprofit status, which would give it to us for a little bit of money, and we would be tax exempt. My idea was to raise the $83,000 that's owed in back taxes and just buy it, because it might be a quicker way to go. So that's the point that we're at with the group, and we've got some significant people interested, and I've got people throughout the United States right now that are waiting for some development with this so we can start to pursue raising funds, and some of that's not even in this country, it's in Denmark. So that's where we are, but my thinking is all the information's over there on the display. And the original manuscript is sitting over there, and so is a copy of the book that you've seen this morning with the red and yellow jacket. And just for your point of interest, which Fred didn't mention this morning, the red and the yellow are significant colors in a Hawaiian culture. They represent royalty. And I often wondered if Bill W. took those colors. He was very fond of the islands, and I wondered if he took those colors specifically because they donate royalty to the Hawaiian people and peace and kingship. So that's some of the information about 17 William Street. It's located on the corner of Treat Place and 17 William Street. I've been through the building. It structurally seems sound. It's a rubble, a home for the homeless right now. It's boarded up, but it sits there. It's steel, and all the flooring is intact. There are huge pillars, probably 3 times the size of these pillars that are in this room that hold up the structure up through the 8th floor. The views from the top floors, the 7th and 8th floors, are absolutely breathtaking. You can see the whole city. The planes taking off from Newark. It's really, and the big, huge windows. One of the floors must have been a showroom at one time, a furniture showroom or something, because it's got, and the windows on every floor are very, very large. There's about $5 to $6 million worth of repairs have to be done on it if the building is saved. But, I have a group of people together that really believe that if God wants this building restored, it's going to get restored, and we'll find a way to do it. And if we can't, then at least we've historically cited the place, and there'll be something in the sidewalk or a street sign that will donate the fact that this is a landmark to our heritage in AA, and the formation of every other self-help group that's come behind us. So it's quite a project. I only take one step at a time. Let's get into C Sharp James first, and then we'll worry about the rest later. It'll take care of itself just like anything else does. So I was on the 6th floor where the book was written. The interesting part of it, everything else has been gutted on the floors except that one floor. But there was a fire on that floor. Somebody must have been living up there. So, but the rooms where Bill wrote, the one room, the small room, is there. It's still there intact with the walls up. It's very interesting that one floor. The elevator shafts are still there. It's just, and when you go up to the roof, which you can do, you can walk through the whole building. It's got 2 sets of stairs, one in the back and one in the front. There's 6 trees growing up there. So when we got to the top and we walked out the door and looked at these 6 trees, and it was July, and they were in full bloom, I said, this has got to be a sign that there's something living in this building. So that's where we are with the project, and I thank you. And if you want to sign up for any help that we need, the sign-up sheet's over there. If anybody hears this tape beyond this group, they can call 973-663-1062 and get more information. And eventually we're going to have a web page on the Internet. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, during lunch, I heard a couple of things. I was asked a couple of things, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because some people are starting to question the program that they're working. There's some people are starting to question the program that they're working with the people that are working with them, and that's good. I got to tell you, it's healthy. It seems that there aren't big book sponsors around the area, and that's good for you because you can be the first ones. So the main question was, how do I get to be one? How do I get to do this? And you get to do this by buying tapes. Not necessarily my tape, although that would be nice, but we don't make any money on them. But if you like what you hear here and you want to hear more of what you hear here, then go there and buy them there tapes. Charlie and Joe are the guys. You start with Charlie and Joe. I suggest if you want to start that, you start with the funny guys, Milt Lewis, one of those guys. We got tapes. Everybody's got tapes. Start with the tapes and you start listening to the book. The book was written so that you don't need a big book sponsor because there weren't big book sponsors. So if you start to study the book, you're going to be able to do what people did all around the world. And Pat and I were in Denmark this past summer, and recovery, AA, is about 10, 12 years old in Denmark. And our guide was from Iceland, and Gunnar is 18 years sober, and AA, Alcoholics Anonymous in Iceland, is about 18 years old. So it's new, and it's just getting there. And people, when you announce that you're sober 22 years, Pat with 28 years, people do those, things, So, but that's how it got there. It was written down, it was passed along, and that's what this was designed to do. So people all around the world picked this book up and began to learn what they needed to know.